Well, I'm sorry to say we seem to have lost part of part 27. Part of part 27. I don't know what's happened to the memory card, but you've missed the bit with the scaffolding. I'll see if I can put some stills in. So you last saw this when there were two pillars, one on the left and the one on the extreme right. So we've put the other two pillars in the centre bit, and if I can move the camera right up there, the toppy bits, and these weigh about 400 weight, these tops, and they go the one section from there down to the back. So I had Mr. Chippy on the ladder at the back and me on the scaffold putting those in, which was a laugh and a half. So that repeats on the other side. The other changes, if you saw the Christmas special, I was discussing the Swell box and the Swell shutter. So you can see, if I zoom in, we've got the Swell, we've got the Swell box now with its shutters in. And so you can see the top two are open. Well, you would if that rail wasn't there. You can see the top one is open and the back support for the front pipes is in the way of the other one. And they open and close from the central swell pedal. And as I was saying on the video, the Christmas special, originally this would be a ratchet swell pedal, and this is one of the 1920 modifications I haven't reversed. It is convenient having a balanced swell pedal in the middle rather than a ratchet swell pedal on the right. I wouldn't say it's the best job in the world the way they've done it, but what I've done, if we just bring the camera down and at that zoom you can see through the bench there, the oak facing of that swell pedal sticking out. It was linoleum and I just wasn't going to accept that, so I managed to find a woodworking firm in Scotland who were prepared to sell me a small piece of 10mm thick oak, and I've glued and screwed it onto the already oak swell pedal, which had been covered in lino. I couldn't just reface and refinish the basic swell pedal once I'd taken the lino off, because there's fittings which are metal which are built into that. So that had to be done that way. We've also got the composition pedals in, which newer organs are called pistons, and on the right hand set of stops the composition pedals will put in a preset selection. And I've shown you how all that worked before I've actually got it coupled up. We'll just go over there and we'll have a look at some of the mechanism. So the swell pedal is this one with the weight on it. That gives it its balance. The composition pedal, you've got one there and you've got one there, and they at the bottom there and there, and then you go onto those rods to transfer it laterally across to where the pedals are for the organist to press. They're called trundles, those rods that move laterally. So I did show you the way the fans worked when we were putting all this mechanism together. Just lean the camera against the case there. We'll just come out a little bit. We'll come out a little bit. That's as far out as we're coming. So you've got a fan here, which is operated, which will operate the preset selection. You've got a fan here, which will operate the preset selection. These metal things here, which are activated by those pedals. So, and that works on the slides as we go up, which will select the stops by putting the slides in and out. So the very first set of pipes at the front of the organ is the open diapason, and some of the bases go onto the front. So that all the front pipes are speaking pipes, they're not dummies on this organ. The next one back, if you can just see the bottom of the wooden pipes there, It's a stopped diapason. And then you've got the bell gamba, which isn't in yet, but it's come back from Leeds after being repaired. Then we've got the principal 4. And then we haven't got the upper board. We've got the upper board down. We haven't got the rack board or pillars in, because we're going to have to redo that for the 15th that I'm fitting. Because if you remember, this organ, the very first next to the passage board, this one was a Dulciano, and it shouldn't have been. It should be a 15th. So I've had a 15th made for 2,000 quid plus VAT, and that's going to get fitted. So that's one of the very last things to get in, because somebody my size, it's not easy to manoeuvre inside an 1865 organ where people were a bit thinner in those days. All right, so I'm just going to go move the camera down. So yesterday, we've got this blue trunk. This goes under the organ to the other side. So I've opened up the bellows. We've got a blanking plate in there. So I've removed the blanking plate. So this goes straight down to there. So we've got a small trunk, goes from the bellows well, which I've just poked my foot at with my best Aldi trainers on, or were they little, and then you've got another wind trunk. You can see the second slot there. So one wind trunk goes from there to there, and the second wind trunk goes from there to the chest, which will be here, and that chest, you can see that's ready to screw to that chest, is the pedal chest for this side. So you've got half the pedal pipes on this side and half on the other side. So that trunk, which I'll just move across, is this. So that will get screwed in there. And this rod opens and closes a valve inside, and that's the Bourdon 16 draw stop on the console operates that rod through a lever action. So if we turn this round and move it upwards a bit, you can see the works on the inside. I cleaned this yesterday, so hopefully. And this is how the wind is put through to the pedal section. So if the stop's off, the wind doesn't enter the pedal chests. If the wind's on, this rod pulls up and that valve opens, which is in the leather on that is absolutely fine after 140 odd years. So that's the open position, and then the wind can travel into the trunk. So it goes into that bottom blue trunk, goes across to the other side. Let's bring the camera around. Now on the left hand side of the organ, which is called the bass side. The right hand side is always called the treble side. And you've got this ready for the chest, which will go across here. For the other pedal pipes. So this is why I'm trying to get all the mechanism in before we start blocking it in with other parts of the mechanism. Now, talking about the swell shutters. So we can see, if I just widen the camera out, you can see the top two shutters are open, and you can see the bottom shutter is open, and the other one is caught on something, so it's open a bit. So there's three which aren't. So the top one's got the proper pin in, the bottom one's got the proper pin in, the second from the top has got a screw in it. I can't believe the other organ builders who worked this, because I know him very, very well. I can't think that he used screws. I don't know what's happened there. And I can't see that we've lost the proper pins either. Anyway, I've ordered new pins, and they'll come in a few days between Christmas and postal strikes. So the other thing I want to show you is the conveyances. So as I said, some of the pipes are on the front. Some of the open diapason And so they're conveyed from the soundboard. And you use these 3 tubes, because there's 3 pipes. And so these go to where the pipes would naturally be on the soundboard. And so it's conveyed off with these 1.5" diameter pipes. So you get a proper wind supply now available here. And I'll go and stand on something and show you the ones at the top. Now they're called conductors in America. They're called conveyancers in this country. So I'm up here, I'm standing on the bench. I've got some tuning slides there which we've been fitting to that principle. And you can see we've been putting these stopped diapasons in. And that's where these conveyancers are. For the treble side of the front. And then correspondingly at the bass side. And you can see how, I mean, if this was a new organ, we'd just put flexible tubes in from one hole to the other. It'd be as simple as that. But the way they've done this, all these beautifully mitered things, these are made out of lead. What's a lot of trouble? And about 3 of these with cracks in them. And that's because they're supposed to be glued in. And to be honest, I'm not gluing them in. There doesn't seem to be a pressure loss. At the end of the day, it's my organ in my building. If it was a customer's organ in a church, and we would glue them in with the animal glue. You see, you don't want to be using a glue that is difficult to reverse. And when you take these out and they've been glued, the snag is that, you know, the pressure you've got to put on the tubes can damage them at the joins. So Mr. Chippy's been there with that 200-watt soldering iron that Alan very, very kindly sent us. And once again, we used it. The little things like that bit of wax on the upper board there, just there. In days gone by, an organ builder's put a candle there so they can see what they're doing. You think this was built at a time when there wasn't electricity and it was candles. You know, wow. And I'm still playing the same Christmas carols on that special that would have been played on this 140 years ago. And that is such a thing to the past. Not quite sure what that notch is. So we've got a little bit of case to put on, which we were looking for. Right at the top there, just to finish off, there's a piece both sides. And I've got those, I've painted those, I just need putting in from the top. I'll wait till we've got Mr. Chippy here, just to, I don't want to be leaning over 14.5 feet up in the air if I'm here on my own. Little natural crack in that piece of timber, and it's not structural at all, so that can stay. So as far as the music desk is concerned, I've had to use that because I was having to use this organ for practice over the Christmas period. So that has got sanded down. The other side's got sanded down, ready to French polish. And the way this was, on the inside, it was painted brown. I think it was brown wash, you know, whitewash, but brown wash. So it's supposed to be the colour of the organ on the outside, which it is, and they'd had it this brown wash on the inside. And what I've done is to French polish that, and that's what I'll do with the next case section, lid section I've shown you. And then you've got another one which I've already done. So I've done the French polish on the short one, but I haven't done the other side. So that's something else to paint. But I can get on with that now, I don't have to use the organ to practice on. These are the original hinges, so I refurbished those. And these are the original hooks. And can you see how there's this damage? Because someone has put down repeatedly the lid when those hooks are in the up position. Time and time again. They don't learn, do they? Now, would they do that on the piano at home? I don't think so. The other thing I've done, there's a lock at the top for the way the front goes in. Let's just zoom in on that. I can't see it in the viewfinder. Yeah, there it is. So up here is a lock, and the idea is this is how you get into the mechanism. And I'm going to open that up and drop the key because there's a part that I've been looking for and has now appeared. And it holds the concussion bellows springs on the right hand treble side. So there is one just there, if you can see where I'm pointing. And then there's this other one which, when you turn it upside down, you lose the screws out of it. But it goes in there, and then there's two springs going. So I needed that front off, which I've now done. Now that lock that I've put on, I bought off eBay. So same kind of size and a vintage lock. I think I had to pay a tenner for it, but it came with a key. So what's happened, that's how it's supposed to be opened, using the key as the kind of lever to open the front. But what they've done in the past, they've obviously lost the key to it and they've been forcing it out with a screwdriver from the bottom. So that's improved it somewhat. So what we're actually up to at the moment, what we're really up to, is here. We're just cleaning these pipes. So these are the rest of the Stopped Diapason. So yesterday, I've cleaned and overhauled 7. And we've got another 8 to do. 2, 4, 6, yeah, 8. The top one is a metal pipe, and that's not been altered, that's the way it would be. I've no doubt if I carefully blow through them by holding my hand over, that's the next to the top note. And that's a very blocked up sounding top note. They're the same kind of sound, they're just different materials. So what you have to do, oh, so why are these in clamps? Oh yeah. That's what I'm going to tell you. Why are they in clamps? So the first one has a split on this edge. So I've had to re-leather the stopper. I'll just take that out of the clamp. And hopefully that's now... Well, on the bigger pipes we can put very small screws in, but on pipes as small as this it's difficult to really get screws in. They need to be like number 2 gauge and things like that. You must never use nails. So what happens here is the old... Well, I'll tell you what, I'll take one out of the next pipe. So I've vacuumed these off. So what I have to do is to take the stopper out. Now these haven't been moved for 10 years plus. So what you end up having to do is to bash them down to break the seal because they get stuck. So very carefully, I've moved that. So now I can withdraw that carefully. So you've got the wooden pipe which is open The stopper turns it to a different footage. Now, what's that, 3 inches long, 4 inches long? By putting a stopper in it, it makes it a speaking equivalent of 8 inches long. It doubles it, because as the sound hits the lips and goes up the pipe, it hits the stopper and it comes back down again. So it doubles it, and that's how you get a 16-foot pitch out of an 8-foot pipe. So obviously these aren't 8, this is an 8-foot rank. The bottom note is 4 feet and has a stopper in it, so it gives it an 8-foot pitch. So we're coming right to the top notes now. And so I can't really demonstrate it, but if I blow through it, it's that note without the stopper. It should be an octave different, kind of, with the stopper. So what you have to do is you take the stoppers out and you've got to peel back the leather without it cracking. Now, it must never be glued to the sides or stuck to the sides. And if we can't do that, then the stopper has to be re-leathered. There we are, that's come out perfectly. And what you then do is, just with a small paintbrush, we just need to get rid of any crud on there. Now, if you look, there's a hole in the top there, and there's a hole in the leather there. So, it's all to do with the voicing. It becomes a chimney flute. I'm not a pipe maker. You know I'm not a pipe maker, I'm an organ builder. But they know about these things. I'll just see if I can find a rod. So, I've got a rod in a piece of timber, and of course it will pass all the way through. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. Blow lamp. Because these stoppers have been re-leathered, we've got to burn the hole through. It's not punched through or cut through, it's burnt through. So we heat up my piece of phosphor bronze in the flame. There's 2 fire extinguishers in here. And I'm going to poke it down the hole, and it's going to come out of the other side. And I'm going to do that again. So we absolutely have a perfect hole burnt through that. And that's the correct technique. So next thing we have to do is we've got tallow grease here. So when I did my training, they said it was supposed to be tallow mixed with neat's foot oil. Well, I can't be bothered, so we just use the tallow on its own. That was to make it a bit more flexible, but I don't see any need to do that. So having re-leathered that, and I'll show you how that's done, I'm now going to put it in the top of the pipe, and we'll put it in so far, and then cut round the excess leather without cutting my fingers off, without which I wouldn't be able to tune radios or play the organ. I cut 2 finger ends off when I was 17, but they grew back. So, if I cover that hole up, you see, it does make a difference. But I don't know how they calculate these things. Obviously it's been going on for 1,000 years plus. So I'm not a pipe maker. So that doesn't seem to have any problems now. And that's a nice note. So that's the first one done. So the second one that's in the clamp, the front's come off. This bit. And so again, it's all done with the animal glue. So what I've had to do is to clamp that overnight under pressure. So that's what was wrong with that one. So again, we've got to grease that stopper. Put the stopper in, and then which way round they go, there's a notch on the stopper, and that corresponds to the mouth. Because everything's individually made, don't ever drop these on the floor, because the chances are something will break. So carefully put that in so far, cut round. Now, the next thing I've got to do is to put that hole in the top. So once again, so I don't need to take this one back out. I was only taking it back out to show you how clean a hole it makes by burning it through. Well, I can't say that sounds the best note in the organ, but we'll come to that when we come to do regulation. Just make sure that stopper's in a bit. And we can prove the hole's okay by covering it up once again. So we know we've got the hole. Now that sounds all right once the stopper was down a bit. I was just worried if there was some split I hadn't seen, but I haven't. I don't seem to. Now, in the bottom of the pipe, it's partly blocked off with wood. And every one is different. And that's how the regulation is done. That's stopping off the air supply. So if we find one's quiet, with some fine nose pliers or with some tweezers, we can pull out the little splinters of wood and we can retry it, and that's how you get the volume. It takes about a day to do one set of 50 odd pipes. In my apprenticeship, that was something I did not look forward to. 2 weeks of being in an organ, having the boss indicate which ones wanted loudening and which ones wanted quietening. But you know, the results were excellent. But this organ's not that far out, to be honest. We haven't had to do much. So the next pipe in the clamp is once again simply because it's had a split there and we've had to glue it. So we'll put some grease on that one. Put it in the correct way round. Cut round the excess leather. And once again, we'll put that hole in with the. That sounds all right. We'll put the hole in with the hot wire. So when I say I'm cleaning organ pipes, and I spent 8 hours doing it, it's not just cleaning with a duster, because what you're doing, you're looking for problems. And so it isn't like this organ came out as a non-working instrument. It has been overhauled, had a clean overhaul in 85, but it obviously needed a major overhaul. So that hole should now be there. Let's put my finger over it. Yep, that's fine. So we've now got those next 7 which can go in the organ. So I'll put those out of the way on top of the lid. And so the next pipes we're going to start with, I've already vacuumed them off, is that one. So the second one, I'm not going to do all these in front of you, but just knock that stopper down to make sure that any seal's broken. You can end up ruining what leather's there, pulling it out. You can see it's loose, you know, and it's the way it's been done in the past. So we need to try and peel that back. And obviously putting leather on these does have its expenses, especially if it's a huge pipe. I'm not trying to not to replace rotten leather. I like as much originality as possible. Now that has been re-leathered, and look, there's no hole through. So that's a mistake, and it's also not glued to the top. So they haven't done the hole. So that has been wrong, probably since 1920. But nobody's noticed because the pipe's actually tuned to the right note. So once again, we'll peel that back and turn it inside out. Because what you're doing, you're plumping it up. So there you are, a fault from all those years ago. So let's look at the next one. Pop it down a bit, pull it out. See, that one's got its hole in it. And try and turn that inside out. Now that one's split. I've been unable to retain that without splitting it on the corner. We'll just scrape off the where it's stuck. It should never be glued there. It's glued in the middle. So in a way, I'm glad I've had one to do, because I'll show you what we do. Here's a scrap of leather. I don't have to take it off the big piece off the skin. I'll just show you with this bit of plate that I removed from the bellows. So all we have to do is to kind of cut round something like so. It's that and that. I'm going to have to put the glue pot on, and that'll be an hour warming up. So we've got to pretend that I've glued it to there, and it's the shiny side to the timber, and the rough side is the bit which gets greased. So I'll just put some grease on, because I'm going to have to for this next stage. And then what we do is we put it in, hopefully the notch the right way round. Then we're left with it just as you saw those others, that when the glue's dried in 24 hours time, we're able to cut round and we've done another one. So any repairs like that, it's going to be 24 hours before we can actually do anything with the pipe. So that's what we're up to. And the other thing we're going to do, I'll just put those to one side. I showed you this control valve thing for the pedal bourdon. And so by opening and closing it, we've got that. Now when this organ was removed, the right hand side, the treble end of the organ, was against the wall of the building and by a window. And this is a building with no damp proof it came out of. And the wall had got rising damp. This is one of the reasons the organ had to come out. I wish it had gone back in. But anyway, they've chosen not to do that. So most of the screws on the right hand side of the organ we had a lot of difficulty getting out. Whereas the screws on the left hand side of the organ, because they're always put in with grease, organ builders always put them in with grease, well, we've had to force this out with a crowbar. And that's why it's still got the screws in it. Now last night I put some oil on these, on the inside and the outside, and what we're going to try and do is to bash those screws out, and I'm hoping I can refurbish them and reuse them. So I'm going to pause the camera whilst I find a hammer. That one's gone. As you can see, that's one of the other ones which is snapped off from the other part. No, that's come out. So that's one. Two. It's interesting, the different sizes. That is not going to budge. You know what? It's time for some heat. The last thing we want to do is to break the timber and then end up having to make a new plate. That's out. So I'm going to finish this video when I've actually installed this control valve. I'm not going to go scrambling on the floor and picking that up, you know. Right, well that's got them out. And then in the bottom, there's two that have snapped off. So we'll get the gauges right and work out what screws we need to put in there. So the ones that have come out we've got two long ones on the right, and it looks like we've got two short ones which all match on the left. Now these same screws are going to go back in, refurbished. These are 14 gauge or even 16 gauge. They're difficult to get, means buying them off eBay, new old stock, or old stock. So we've got to unbend that one. We've got to clean them all up so they can be reused. So I'm going to pause the camera and we'll do just that. So you can see what we're doing. It's the one I'm pointing the torch on. The 4 screws in each corner have been filled with dowel, and I've just cut that with a chisel. And correspondingly, the 4 holes in the bellows were filled in. That's the ones in the corner. The ones in the middle just held that temporary MDF plate on so the wind wasn't pouring out. And they don't go all the way through. So we're going to re-drill those, and we're going to put those screws in. Right, here goes. We'll kneel on a blanket. Don't want to knacker my knees up any more than they are. So hopefully everything's exactly the right level. So we're going to drill these as if it's new. And I've gone and left the screws behind on the table. Right, this screwdriver I'm about to use is too small, but we'll make a start. And the 2 on the right had the longer screws in. It's always, I've already checked, but we've always got to make sure that screws are not body bound and that a pilot hole has been drilled. Makes me cringe looking at the building tray. We'll do the same at the other side. So it doesn't matter how it was placed before, we've filled the holes in as you've seen. So they may be in the same place, they may be totally new screw holes, it really doesn't matter. We're putting this where we want it, not necessarily where they wanted it. And I'm already making the schoolboy error and putting the short screw in instead of the long one. The only time I use electric screwdrivers is taking organs out, not putting them in. I need absolute maximum control. And the one on the right. Right, I'm going to screw those tight. You don't need to watch me do that. That's the 4 screws in. Now I'm going to make sure there's no significant wind leaks by putting the wind on before I put the lower 4 screws in. So bearing in mind the stop's in its off position, so the valve should be shut. There shouldn't be wind going into the lower trunk. So I'll switch the wind on. So there is a little bit on this left hand edge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to unscrew that again, and we'll put some of the tallow grease down that edge. But you'll see you can see what's going on here. So off position is down. Nothing coming through there. Pull the stop out, and you can see we've got some bits coming out there. Yeah, that's working fine. And of course, that's happening at the other end as well with that trunk. So that's where we're going to leave it. So I'm also going to enjoy myself fitting that part under there with the springs, as I mentioned. So we'll take the wind off. Yeah. Now there's virtually no leakage on that, but I'll get some grease underneath, and then it's going to be spot on. So there you go, that's part 28. So I think by the time we get to part 29, we'll have got all the swell shutters with the proper pins in. And one of the other things we'll be doing is the centre display pipes. As soon as we've put the open diapason in, we can put the centre front pipes in, and they're going to need respraying. So I'll just finish off the video by taking the camcorder into the organ workshop where we've temporarily put those pipes. So there we are, we've already cleaned those. So they're the ones that go in the centre bay. The ones on the treble and bass end, there's 3 each side. I haven't even got out of storage yet. The pipes behind those are for this organ, which got to a certain stage and then we had to stop because of this one, the one we're working on. This will be one for sale rather than for us. And then our finished conical is over there behind these panels, which are for this organ. So there we go, that concludes part 28 of the 1865 conical. I've just noticed the swell shutters on our conical there. You'll see that they're vertical on that organ, and on our What's It of Lincoln organ, they're horizontal. This organ's 1888. This organ's 1877. And of course the one we're working on is 1865. We've got one in stock which is 1864, so it's even older, which is a Lloyd and Dudgeon. But it looks like it's been floated down the Trent for 20 years, it's in such a state. So that'll take me more than a year to do. Right, that concludes it. So thanks for watching part 28, and I hope you found that interesting and showing 1 or 2 techniques, which as an organ builder is all part of your 7-year apprenticeship.